Hello, welcome to Gurukul's CAT 100 series, a series that's designed specifically to take you from your study room to the corporate boardroom. I am Prady Sharma and this is Verbal Mastery with Prady. Welcome back to another RC in the Verbal Mastery with Prady series by the Gurukul. Now, this is the passage for today. In case you want to take this up as a test, then all you've got to do is go on to www.thegurukul.org.in and sign up for the 100 days to CAT series, which is a free test series that's been designed for all of you, where we'll be giving you one test of QA, VA and LRDI every single day for the next 100 days so that you can stay consistent with your CAT prep, and we'll take you directly from your study room to the corporate boardroom. Now, let's get into this passage. First, you've got to pause when I ask you to pause, read the passage, jot the main points down, and then we'll go in for the passage and question explanations. Okay, so this is your first paragraph. Pause the passage here, read this paragraph, and then we'll go for the second paragraph. This is your second paragraph. Pause the passage here, read this paragraph, and then we'll go into the third paragraph. This is your third paragraph. Pause the passage here, read this third paragraph, and then we'll go into the fourth paragraph. This is your fourth paragraph. Pause the passage here, read this paragraph, and then we'll get into the questions. Now, this is your question number 1. Pause the passage here, answer the question, and then we'll move on to the second question. This is your question number 2. Pause the video here, and then we'll move on to the third question. This is your question number 3. Pause the video here, and then we'll move on to the last question of this passage. This is your question number 4, last question of the passage. Pause the video here, answer this question, and then we'll go into the passage and question explanations. Okay, now that you have finished answering all the questions, comment your answers in the comment box so that we get to know how many of those questions you've gotten correct. If there are any doubts, please do not hesitate to put it down in the comment box and we'll reply back to you ASAP. Okay, so now let's get into the passage explanations and the question explanations. Alright, for the passage explanations, this is your first paragraph. So, around the world, public attitudes towards international policies are coalescing. What is the meaning of coalescing, guys? Coalescing means coming together into one block. Okay, into two opposing blocks, liberal democracies favoring US and citizens of more authoritarian nations who back China and Russia. So, the entire policies now are into two blocks. One is about US and the second one is having China and Russia. Okay, a process accelerated by the war in Ukraine. So again, this is not started by the war in Ukraine, this is accelerated, intensified by the war in Ukraine. This is according to the University of Cambridge researchers who harmonized data from surveys conducted in 137 countries, including 75 countries, since Russia attacked Ukraine in February 2022 and found a divide growing for a decade. So basically what is happening, they have these University of Cambridge researchers, they've collected data. Okay. So here harmonized, alright, harmonized means combined, collected. Okay, you can also think of it as analyzed in this context, alright. So they've analyzed data from surveys which were conducted in 137 countries, including 75 countries since Russia attacked. So there were 137 countries, out of which 75 after Russia has attacked Ukraine in 2022. And what did they find? They found that this divide, okay, has been growing between these two kind of nations which are supporting these two blocks, okay, and it is now polarizing. Yes, polarizing means pushing into opposites. They say that Russia's war has led people in the West to feel ever greater allegiance to both US and NATO. Now, what is the meaning of allegiance? Allegiance is nothing but show of support. Right, so ever greater allegiance to both US and the NATO. NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and brought wealthier democracies in Latin America and Eastern Europe towards pro-American stance. So, because of the war that's going on between Ukraine and Russia, a lot of liberal democracies, democracies which value freedom and all, those in the from the Latin American region, they are now taking a more pro-American stance. That means they're supporting America more. Now let's move forward to the second paragraph. However, the report also identifies a zone of illiberal and undemocratic societies stretching from East Asia throughout the Middle East and towards West Africa. So now this is another zone. Okay, now how did the author categorize this zone? As illiberal and undemocratic societies. Okay, so all the democratic societies are going towards US. Now what about this undemocratic societies? They're characterized by exact opposite trend. Populations that have steadily increased support for China, Russia, or both in the recent years. So now what do I understand? If it is a democratic country, they're going towards the US, and illiberal, undemocratic countries, they're coming towards China and Russia. Okay, this is what I get to understand from here. He's giving some statistics. Among the 1.2 billion people who inhabit the world's liberal democracies, 3/4 now hold a negative view of China and 87% a negative view of Russia. So what do I understand from this? Majority people, okay, do not like China and Russia. Yet, among the 6.3 billion who live in the world's remaining 136 country, opposite is the case. Okay, that means the rest of the world. If I'm looking at the rest of the world, this row means rest of the world. Okay, majority people like China and Russia, and they do not like the other things. Okay, he's not told about the other side. He's only told that these people feel positively towards China and Russia. Okay, so the analysis includes significant public opinion data from emerging economies and the global south, and suggests this divide is not just economic or strategic, but based in personal and political ideology. That means what? It's not for the economic reasons, okay, or the strategic reasons that the divide has come, this polarization has come, but this is because of personal and political ideology. So this has to do more with, personal attitudes that the people in those countries have, and the political attitudes rather than the economic attitudes. The world has now divided into liberal and illiberal spheres. So there are two different spheres altogether, as we have spoken, and they're liberal spheres and illiberal spheres. Liberal spheres are those who want freedoms and all. Illiberal spheres who want more control, authority and all. Okay. Yeah. So this is said by someone that person is not really important for us in this passage. Third paragraph. Today's global divide does not depend as much on historic ties between nations, so it's not about the history that's there. The strongest indicators we found for how societies across the world align geopolitically are the fundamental values such as freedom of expression. So from here, what do I understand? Not because of history, but because of fundamental values, correct? Okay. Now, on one side of the new divide are what researchers call the Maritime Alliance. So there's one group that's called as the Maritime Alliance, with principles based in free flows of trade and ideas and the protection of individual rights. So now what do I understand? I understand that this liberal democracies or liberal democratic group that we first saw is the same as maritime group. Okay, so this should support US and NATO. This is one group, right? These countries include much of Europe and most stable parts of Americas and Australia. Their lodestar is still primarily the US. So this lodestar is someone who shows you direction. Okay, one might even call this as the guiding light. Right. It's still the US despite the disturbance of the Trump presidency. So even though Trump is the president, US is still the guiding light for these block of countries. The opposing cluster is centered on a Eurasian bloc anchored by China and Russia, with links across continents to Central Asia, Iran and the Arab Middle East, as well as large parts of Africa and Southeast Asia. So the other side is, having these countries, okay, and they are favoring China and Russia. Now, researchers say that some comparison to the Cold War era still hold, as this latter group is broadly united in the rejection of Western modernity and liberal values. So basically what he's saying is comparing this later group's ideologies to some kind of the ideologies that were there post the Cold War also. Okay, autocrats such as Putin have taken the opportunity to present themselves as defenders of what they call traditional values against a perceived threat of Western liberalism. So this Western liberalism apparently is something that people should be afraid of or should be taken care against. So autocrats. Okay, now what is the meaning of this word autocrats? If you look at the roots, auto means own or self, and crat comes from cresi, okay, which means rule of. So rule of one person, one single person is autocracy. So autocrat means the ruler. Okay, so rulers like Putin have taken this opportunity to present themselves as a defender, someone who is trying to stop this Western liberalism being imposed onto their people. Okay, the war on Ukraine has galvanized. Now again guys, galvanized, it's a nice word. Okay, so galvanized means motivated or intensified. Right, so this word is intensified. The war on Ukraine has intensified this divide, but the findings are telling us that this has been a decade in the making, as global public opinion on geopolitics was far more mixed and undefined 10 years ago. So what happened? 10 years ago, people didn't really know how they felt, or though they knew, they did not, really come out, and there was no survey, so we didn't know exactly how people felt. But now that everything is clear, okay, this divide is much more visible. But it's not now that this divide has come; it's already been a decade in the making. Okay, the researchers argue that China's assertiveness and transnational infrastructure investments have helped shift the dial, as well as both China and Russia's strategic focus on Africa. So what is this? Researchers saying that there's one reason why all this is happening is because China has invested heavily in transnational projects, okay, like the Belt and Road Initiative, these kind of projects you might have heard of, right? So those have actually helped shift the narrative towards China. Okay, Russia's war has caused this global divide to intensify, as literal battle lines are now drawn that reflect the two sides of the liberal freedoms and authoritarianism. If we look at how different populations around the world feel towards Russia, we find an almost identical reflection on how their governments have handled the country diplomatically. Now, this is a very, very important statement, guys. What does this statement mean? It means that the public opinion, whatever the public opinion is, the governments are reflecting that public opinion in how they are dealing with Russia. So, if the public wants authoritarianism, if they are more towards control-based, democracies or control-based countries, then they are favoring Russia. But if the public in that particular country is more liberal, wants more freedom, then they're favoring the US. Now that we're done with the passage explanations, let's quickly get into the question explanations. This is our question number 1. Which of the following statements best encapsulates the central argument of the passage? Okay, so what is the author asking? What's the main idea of the passage, or what's the central argument of the passage? The war in Ukraine is the sole catalyst for the unprecedented polarization of global public opinion in two distinct political blocs. Okay, now I have two issues with this. First issue is this part where I'm talking about the sole catalyst, and the second one is about the unprecedented polarization. Both of these are wrong, right? Both of these have not been mentioned. They've told exactly opposite of it in the passage. So this will be an opposite choice, so I'm going to remove this. Historical alliance and economic ties are increasingly irrelevant. So far it's good, guys, in shaping current geopolitical alignments, which are now primarily defined by a rejection of Western values. Again, guys, this is just a comparison that the author has brought, but the actual reason is not the rejection of Western values, right? So what can we say? Just because of this part, this has been paraphrased in a way that it sounds correct, but it's still a wrong answer. Global public opinion is undergoing a decade-long ideological polarization. Yes, it's been happening since 10 years, so far this is good. Intensified by recent conflicts, again good for me. Creating two distinct blocs aligned with either liberal democracies or authoritarian states. Perfect. So this reflects everything that we have seen in the passage, so this becomes the best possible answer for us so far. Let's look at D. If D is better, then we'll go for D, otherwise C will be our correct answer. The rise of China and Russia have fundamentally shifted global political power dynamics, forcing democratic nations into defensive maritime alliance to protect their interests. Now again, there's no part where it's been mentioned about forcing. People have aligned, people have pledged their allegiance willingly, right? So this part again is a little extreme, so we can remove this. The correct answer now for us will be C. Now let's move to the second question. Based on the passage, the ideological divide underpinning global current geopolitical alignment primarily manifests as a divergence in fundamental beliefs regarding. So, what don't people agree? Why are there these two blocks? That's what he's already asking. The optimal model for economic development and trade policies, again, he's clearly told that this is not about economy. So, this is going to be an opposite answer. Okay, I can remove this. The balance between state authority and individual liberties. Again, yes, this could be correct because we are talking about how state authority is, or rule or control is more important to certain nations, and liberal freedoms are important to the other nations. So this is a good answer so far. The historical legacy and influence of colonial powers. See, first of all, in the passage, there's no influence of colonial powers that we've been talking about. Second, historical legacy, he's clearly told us that the historical ties don't matter so much right now, so I can remove this as well. The necessity of international alliances for collective security. He has nowhere talked about having a collective security in the passage. This is completely out of scope to us, so we can remove this. The best possible answer now becomes B. So let's go to the third question. The researchers' conclusion that the strongest indicators we found of how societies across the world align geopolitically are their fundamental values such as freedom of expression assumes that. So what does this conclusion really assume? See, what did the researchers do? They took a survey. Based on that survey, they gave us their findings. So what are all their conclusions really based upon? The survey that they took, right? Now if I say that the survey in itself is wrong, then all their findings will be wrong, right? So let's find an answer which talks about the survey. A. Survey data accurately captures the deeply held fundamental values of a population. Again, we are assuming that the survey is correct. So that is the main assumption that we made. So this should be our correct answer, but let's look at the other options as well. Economic prosperity as a prerequisite for a society to prioritize values like freedom and expression. Nowhere has he told that only very prosperous countries are having freedom and expression. Okay, by that logic, we are going forward and saying that no country in Middle East Asia is prosperous. So this should not be the right answer. Countries with similar historical experience are more likely to share fundamental values. Again, he said that historical ties have nothing to do with all this. So we can remove this answer as well. Governments consistently reflect the fundamental values of their citizens in their diplomatic actions. Now, this is one of their findings. This is not an assumption. This is what they've told us based on survey results. So this can be taken off. The best possible answer will be A. Now, let's go for the fourth question. The authors use of phrases like accelerated by the war in Ukraine and galvanized this divide in conjunction with the finding that polarization has been a decade in the making, primarily suggests that Ukraine's role in global war, Ukraine's war's role in global polarization is one-off. So what did Ukraine basically do? Throughout the passage explanation, we have been seeing that Ukraine's role has just been to intensify, to make things worse, correct? So let's find an answer appropriate for that. Causation, as it single-handedly initiated, now it's single-handedly initiated, that itself is wrong. It did not single-handedly initiate anything. Last 10 years se ho raha hai. All the 10 years global war was not happening, all the 10 years Ukraine war was not happening, right? Intensification, amplifying pre-existing and developing ideology fault lines. So this could be the correct answer. Diversion, shifting focus away from fundamental value conflicts towards military confrontations. Where have we even spoken about military confrontations? Exactly. And if we have shifted away from fundamental value, okay, how did we go towards military confrontation? This has not been mentioned in the passage, so I can remove this. Validation, providing concrete proof that historical answers are the ultimate determinant. Throughout the passage, my dear friends, he's clearly told history has nothing to do with this. So I can remove D as well. The best answer now becomes B. If you watched it till here, please drop a like. This helps us stay motivated and make more videos like this for you. Tell us in the comment box how many questions you've gotten correct and share this with your friend who's also preparing for CAT 2025. I'll see you in the next one.
Hope you enjoyed learning from today's session.
This series is designed to help you with your CAT preparation and practice daily. We are with you in this journey.
To watch the next video, click here. And to watch Gurukul's CAT 100 series, study room to boardroom, the entire playlist, click here.
If you learned from today's session, like, share, and subscribe.